Hey everybody, welcome back to Your Free TV. It is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025 here on the channel. And I will just jump in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution, protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. And I'm so glad to be back with you here on Tuesday. Of course, we had the incredible UN speech by President Donald Trump today. That was just a barn burner. It was amazing, basically saying all the truth right out there in the open. And I would say the number one thing, so many number one things, but one very important and pertinent thing is he called out that Christians are the most persecuted religious group in the world. That's massive. And so we're going to jump into his speech in a moment. As you know, I'd like to say thank you to everybody supporting the channel. Thank you, Lori, for the added donation. And thank you to everyone supporting monthly. And to let everybody know, my great sponsor, c60evo.com /YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off on ESS60, the incredible miracle molecule made in the best lab, really, in the world, out of Houston, Texas, with organic oils and incredible quality to get all the solvents out. Basically, that's why they're able to call it this ESS60, because it's so uber completely pure. And of course, to make this product, it requires enormous purification. So anyway, check it out. If you donate to the channel anytime, you get 15% off with a new code and link sent to you. And I've been doing a bit of a fundraiser for the channel that is completely separate from Evo, totally just through the channel. It's probably wrapping up this week because of availability. And I thank everybody who has or wants to support that fundraiser. All of that's below. I'll get to it. But, you know, you really want to consider this as an incredible antioxidant, as an incredible anti-inflammatory, but supremely because it gets into your mitochondria, deep in the cells, working with the glutathione and your melatonin to clean the garbage out of your cells. And cellular health and regeneration of cells is what's key to longevity and fighting every single, chronic disease and a developmental disease that happens over time. It's bought up in the caseload by the big C clinics that are working to do alternative therapies in connection with more traditional therapies. It's just an incredible molecule. And also, we've had some great reports at C60 Evo with people who have had great success with autism. So anyway, check it out, c60evo.com /YAFTV, code YAFTV, 10% off. But you can read the testimonials there and decide for yourself. And so, okay, jumping in here to the news, and there's so much of it, and I'm so excited to be with you here again. A little late. I'm running late these days. I just got other things going on, so I'm trying to do what I can here in the time that I have. So put on the glasses, and here we go. So I'm going to start with some other news before I jump into Trump's UN speech, because it is very just an incredible day today. And of course, lots going on there with the UN. And so we're going to talk about first this very interesting situation of the Secret Service reporting that they busted this massive SIM card AI server farm, okay, in 5 different locations spread throughout New York City, connected to another site that was at least 35 miles outside of the city. That has to do with 100,000 SIM cards, all connected up to AI servers, and that basically they're warning that this has to do with a nation state, and we'll get into that in a second. But basically, 300 co-located SIM servers in the area in these 5 different locations, and basically that what they're saying here is that this is responsible for anonymous cell phone threats that they've been receiving towards political officials. People are wondering, does this have to do with the swatting that's been going on? against political figures and people in the media. And basically, they were saying this whole AI setup that it was it could disable cell towers, do denial of service attacks, and basically operated as an encrypted communication networks through this criminal enterprise. And this is very interesting because they don't focus on this, but this very much has to do with a spy hardware um, uh, system aimed at the UN conference this week, basically, and that this has to do with collecting intelligence about what's going on at the UN, and I would imagine specifically, focused on the people that they're trying to uh, glean and steal their information, their communications, all of it. And so, very interesting here, 35 miles away from UN headquarters, seemed to be the hub, and that it was located in abandoned apartments in these 5 different sites. So that's really huge news in this nation state responsible thing. It's very interesting. Trump, one thing that was glaring in his speech today is that he didn't really mention Israel at all. And that's kind of glaring considering the massive, of course, ongoing fight and influence and everything going down between Trump and Netanyahu. They have the meeting, of course, not coming up at the White House until Monday. Friday, Netanyahu does his speech at the United Nations. You have al-Jilani, the president of Syria, at the UN today, meeting with General Petraeus, a former FBI, CIA director, praising him up and down. And it's just very interesting here because so we're hearing, a nation state is involved, and one would imagine they're going to implicate Iran. I know there was some kind of Iranian protest. I haven't been able to follow that up outside of the United Nations today. And there is, of course, all this intense push to have Trump demonize Iran and everything. And if a nation state is involved and we would look at telecommunications, well, just look at what brought down the Assad regime, right? We have Jelani, welcome to the United Nations, yay, former complete head chopper for Al Qaeda, head of Al Qaeda, and I'll get into him more in a moment. But what took down Assad after 15 years of fighting, all of it, was this app, okay, that was put on the cell phones of the armed forces in Syria and promoted by Assad's wife, supposedly. People who got the app got $50 for installing it in their phones. And through that app, basically, they were able to disrupt the entire military operations, know everything about what was going on, misleading them, disabling them, all kinds of misdirection, and ended up toppling it through telecoms, right? And we have this new telecommunications prosperity agreement, technology and telecoms prosperity agreement with the UK, who NATO has just adopted, just bought the Palantir software. This goes back to their cognitive warfare paperwork back from decades ago. That they've just purchased Maven. Okay, so Palantir will be going throughout NATO, and talk about massive track and trace surveillance. So this is, who's the experts here, right? Who's the experts in these telecom situations? And often it's Mossad, right? If we look at the takedowns of all of the operations that have gone on in the last, uh, it could be anywhere from 8 to 12 months, but in the last 8 months, it's been very intense with what they've pulled off in all of their, whether it's the spider webs or all of the things involving telecoms. So a nation state is responsible, but we don't know who yet. So we'll keep following that, and we'll keep trying to go down that hole there to figure out what's going on. And so maybe I will get into Jelani here for a moment before I get into the Trump speech and other news things besides. I will, I guess, just mention real quick that Ryan Routh, of course, was found guilty on all 5 counts today, including the attempted assassination of President Trump, and facing life in prison. And Judge Eileen Cannon, the great, she's an excellent judge. But what happened in this case was a complete cover-up of his ties to the CIA, his ties to Afghanistan, his ties to all of these foreign money and relations and recruiting Afghanis, the fake Pakistani passports through Pakistan to fight for Ukraine as mercenaries, and all of that was, just didn't come into it. That was all out, as Routh just amazingly decides to represent himself. And then when he's found guilty of all 5 counts, he does this show of trying to stab himself in the neck with a pen. And his daughter's in the courtroom, and she's crying and screaming, and just a big giant thing. And so Routh is most likely, for entertainment purposes only, and I don't wish it, but I'm just saying, if he's facing life in prison, his days are probably fairly numbered, considering what he knows, and we know what happens to these people, these operatives. And so very, very intense there. And I also want to mention more news here before I jump in with the UN speech, and then also about General Petraeus meeting with Mohammed Jelani. But the CDC had a huge win today as well. MAHA, RFK Jr. There's been this man who has been on the wanted list, basically, out of NIH for 10 years, to do with his fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and the doctoring of the evidence to do with thimerosal and the MMR vaccine. And we have RFK Jr. putting this out, which is amazing. Poul Thorsen, a Danish vaccine researcher. He was arrested in Germany. He's waiting extradition. And this has been like a 10-year hunt for this guy, who has 22 counts of wire fraud. And he used the money for funding this North Atlantic Neuroepidemiology Alliance, NANEA, out of Denmark. And they produced a ton of bogus evidence that was used in justifying thimerosal, so aluminum and mercury, and trying to fake the evidence that the MMR vaccine is not linked to what is causing autism. So that's a huge win, and fantastic. We'll keep following that as it goes on. And just a little aside, a couple little asides. We have this video going viral today of this old woman who is wearing this MAKA shirt, MAHA, Make America Kind Again t-shirt. And she's at this protest in New York during the Trump, the UN stuff. And she's trying to beat this effigy of Trump. It's like a piñata size. And she's trying to beat it to bash the head off of Trump in her Make America Kind Again t-shirt. And it's just, oh my God, it's so important that we stay active, and it's one reason I'm, moving on from my rage stage, and just understanding that, they want us to be sort of idle and the trauma drama, idle in our pain, so that they can be idle in their pleasure, right? They want us through our, through everything they do, through their cognitive warfare, and of course their assassinations and their killings and everything else. And we'll touch on that towards the end of the video with Charlie Kirk and his murder and other evidence coming out. But this situation of where we are, meant to be traumatized, dramatized, and to try to harm our ability to take action and move in our lives. And of course, God and the Holy Spirit, prayer is paramount, and just refilling that container of the self, as we continue to live godly lives, put on the full armor, and move forward in the next day, the next moment, every moment. And so let's not be idle in our pain. Um, and that only benefits the Satanists being granted the excesses and the economy of sin that allows them to be idle in their pleasure, which is, of course, of demonic origin. And so, moving on from there, let's get into good old Mohammed Jalani, now the president of Syria. Tulsi Gabbard called it 7 years ago, so clearly and plainly that that the U.S. was supporting all of the the moderate jihadis, and she basically said there are no moderate jihadis. Just ask all the people being slaughtered. After she met with Assad, was hugely attacked for it, for going to Syria and meeting with him, and basically he was like, "Why is the U.S. doing this?" Basically, coming against Syria when we are literally protecting the true moderate Muslims, the Alawites, and the Christians in this country, and continuing to do so. And everything that the American deep state is doing is supporting ISIS and all of these other head choppers and torturers and community burners. And basically, that's what we've seen since Jelani came in, right? And so, another incredible justification of Tulsi Gabbard, and she's doing a great job as Director of National Intelligence. And so, basically, what we get here is him meeting with, doing this little interview at the United Nations, just so sweet. I mean, it was like a love fest. It was just incredible. So you get the former CIA Director General Petraeus, super involved in the creation of this radical jihadism being supported, that has given across the world, and this all ties back to Trump making the incredible bold statement that Christians are the most persecuted religious group in the world. Basically, that the United States for the last 60 years, but certainly the last 25, and way back to sponsor a mujahideen, way back to then. And I would say back as far as 1957, where all of a sudden it became really important to allow Muslims into political office, passing that law, allowing that to happen, and all of that. And so General Petraeus sits down with Mohammed Jalani. And so let's just, a little reminder, okay? Jelani's, he's like a major Al-Qaeda terrorist. He spends 5 years in a U.S. military, but basically CIA black site, where they groom him, do whatever, build him into this character. And then he's gone rogue. Oh man, it's amazing. He's gone rogue. And in 2017, there's a $10 million bounty out for him, all of this, and he's heading Al Qaeda. And then we get 2025, and starting last year, the complete support of him by Israel, and where they're going in and burning down the Alawite towns, murdering the Christians, raping and pillaging, and just slaughtering everybody, and the fall of Assad, and then we get Jelani in power. So this is who Petraeus is doing this sweet little like love fest with today, where he says to him, "Hey, how are you holding up? Jelani, I know it's so hard having been there as a general in Afghanistan and all of this, how are you holding up? Are you sleeping well?" Seriously, this is the level of questions we're getting from former CIA director and General Petraeus. I mean, it's not surprising for any of us who've been following Petraeus for years, but wow. He says, "I am one of your fans and we worry about you." What? We worry about you, Jelani? Is that a thing? Really amazing. And so that's what happened. This is the type of thing that's going on here, and we have Petraeus further, glorifying and hailing Jelani for his clear vision for Syria as it becomes a completely radicalized, extremist Muslim nation, killing the Christians and killing everybody else. So, yeah, there we go. And so it is so in Trump. It's so important that Trump then did what he did today, and it's backtracking through decades and decades of this mind control programming. And Trump went full bore against Europe for what they're doing to Muslim Islamify Europe and destroy the countries and the heritage and the culture. And I will say one more thing here. We just in a little aside here is we get DeSantis designating today, basically dedicating a huge swath of land in southern Florida that will be is being granted to be the upcoming Trump presidential library. So that is just an aside. We'll watch what develops there. And I'll also say that, of course, Turning Point USA campus tours are continuing, and they put out a whole new schedule of people who will be the ones, who are going to pick up the mantle at the campuses and speak for Turning Point USA. And it's an interesting array of characters. You get Tucker Carlson, who'll be in Indiana somewhere, I think late October. Rob Schneider out in California at Berkeley, I think UC Berkeley. Interesting that. Probably great. And then you get Governor Youngkin and Megyn Kelly going to be doing it on the East Coast. Like very interesting cast of characters, and I will link it below so you can check it out for yourself. Okay, and all of while Trump is doing this speech, a couple of really interesting things happen. We have Trump and Melania entering the UN building and going to step on the escalator, and the escalator immediately stops. So completely being trolled and mocked by the UN apparatus. We know he had his meeting with Guterres today as well, von der Leyen, Macron. Zelensky, of course, was a big one. We'll talk about that soon. And the escalator stops, just mocking, I believe, his descent down the escalator there at Trump Tower when he first basically took the world by storm, announcing his candidacy for president in 2015. And so when we look at this with what happened after that is he comes to the podium and the teleprompter then doesn't work. So you're having this just mocking of the president of the United States within the United States on stolen land donated by the Rockefellers to become internationally owned land by the United Nations, and Trump just ripped them a new one. And so let's get into it. And again, as I said, one of the most exciting things was he said that we have to preserve religious freedom, and Christians are the most persecuted. And what I want to say in that is that in all, and as I mentioned, with all of the Muslimification of the West, you have, of course, in everything that U.S. and NATO countries, all of the MI6, everybody. The intended destruction of Western civilization and these countries under attack, specifically and being deconstructed, is what's happened is in all of those places like Libya, Syria, Israel, the multitudes go on of Iraq, that the U.S. has attacked or created this machine of war and global, just basically the psyop of what came after the incredible 9/11 planned catastrophe, is that the Christians have been decimated in all of these countries. Right up to in Israel, like in Bethlehem, it's like 80% of the Christians are gone. So many of them dead. And then, not to mention in Gaza, Palestine, in Libya, in Iraq, in Syria, at least 50% decimated. And so that is the prayer that Trump, although he's shaking hands with Jelani, will help to reverse this. And he gave very strong words to this at the UN today. And so let's get into his speech. Okay, it's been 6 years since his last speech, which was also stellar. And one thing I will say in the beginning is he said the UN has done nothing. For me, I have ended 7 wars, and I never got a call about those negotiations. I never got a call about any of it. And he said that all that the UN has done is give me a broken escalator and a not working teleprompter, as well as the planned migration invasion of Western Europe, of Western civilization, of all of Europe and the USA. And he was very clear about that, calling out the UN for the migration invasion. Of course, that is the Office of Immigration and Migration, that is massively funded, connected to Highest, which was Mayorkas, Highest, all of the groups, Catholic bishops, all of them, all the massive NGOs, the Lutheran groups that became run by Michelle Obama's chief of staff, changed the name, all the trafficking of the kids, which Trump also spoke of. And so let's look at the speech here. He basically, went into USA being the hottest, best country in the world here, and he said America is blessed by being the best, and I just love it. And it's true. He basically called out the beacon to the world of the amount of freedom, liberty, and because of our constitutional republic, what we've been able to do. And so basically, he talked about reversing the catastrophic economic destruction of the Biden regime. And during all of this, in the early beginnings, after the escalator ride and then the teleprompter not working, Melania in the audience looked pretty nervous and honestly frightened of what could happen here. And so, anyway, Trump thanks Bukele and El Salvador for housing all of the migrants that he has deported that were criminals, the criminal gang members in El Salvador. And he said that, uh, again, calling out immediately, the UN didn't help in any of the 7 wars I've ended. They never even called. And he said that the UN is not there for the countries who are at war. So what are they there for? That they have completely failed their mission, that they have, instead of what they were meant to do, which was to provide some sort of, they have that international, what is it called? The United Nations global citizenship, or that, they have basically their own type of constitution. The UN is supposed to provide, protect human rights, to intervene in wars, do all of these things. And Trump said they're not doing any of it. The only thing they're doing is creating this immigration invasion, and they're creating this baloney around the climate grift and using it to destroy Western civilization economies. And he gets really deep in there with all of that. He says empty words don't solve wars. The only thing that solves wars is action. And the UN doesn't live to any of its potential. It has so much potential, but it's not doing any of it. In fact, quite the opposite. And so basically, he goes on to say that he did a bid many years ago to remodel the UN when he was still a massive, real estate guy in New York, and of course one of the biggest. And he basically said that he had said that he could remodel the entire UN building for $500 million, and that they rejected his offer. He said they'd have there would be a cap on it, no overrides, no spending overrides, and that he'd put marble floors in and all of this stuff. And he said, "What do we have now? You're walking on terraza. They spent over $4 billion, and you didn't get the marble floors, and you're walking in this cheap, falling down building." And he said, "I actually testified at Congress about this and the grift that went on in the remodel of the UN building." So very interesting there. And he did mention that the Palestinian state would be a reward to Hamas, but he very much strayed away from talking of Israel, the support of Israel. he basically said that he wants the hostages released, that that's the number one thing, all of them, and that he wants the war in Gaza to end, that the war in Gaza has to end. And so that's very, very interesting. And so then basically he calls out the Russia-Ukraine war, and he calls for the EU to stop buying their oil and gas from Russia. He says they're literally funding the war that they're fighting against. And he said it's crazy, but that's what they're doing. He said it's embarrassing, and they were very embarrassed when I found out about it. And so very interesting to see him call out the EU that way. He then later met with Zelensky, and what he talked about with Zelensky, when they came to their presser, he basically said, Zelensky was like, well, yes, I like your idea that we should have Europe stop buying their energy from Russia. I mean, Zelensky, just puppet liar, complete lies. And Trump also, there's a deal here, I'm sure he's trying to do with, hey, end the war, and we can, get Europe buying, natural gas from Ukraine, and we can, change this around. And so that seemed to go, perk up Zelensky, but he's a complete lying liar. And so basically during the presser, he made a point of saying, well, Slovakia and Hungary, they've just, they're totally against it. They're going to keep buying their energy from Russia, as if they're the big problem in those tiny countries compared to the rest of Europe. So basically trying to demonize Pitsu and Orban out of Hungary. Of course, they tried to kill Pitsu. What was it? 18 months ago now, right? Was shooting him multiple times, I believe, and he survived. Okay, and so basically, Trump demanded that Europe would have to, if they were going to be additional sanctions on Russia, that Europe would have to respect them and adopt them and stop buying Russian energy. And so we'll see what goes on there. Von der Leyen sitting in the audience looking very disturbed, making her machinations, getting ready for her meeting with Trump. And so basically Trump then called on, this is also huge, a cessation of development of nuclear weapons. And that he wants that to be number one priority, that if the UN was to do anything, it would be connected to the world governments stopping the production of nuclear weapons. This is huge, even though we know we're working steadily now with the UK on the development of nuclear fusion technologies and quantum computing and all of it. And so very interesting there. And he said, I want to enforce the biological weapons treaty and the creation of biological weapons, that this must be enforced and revisit that. And interestingly there, he throws in this thing, and we could have this AI verification system. Okay, so, red flags always come up on me when I hear there's going to be some new technology. How about we try out the new technology on biowarfare regulation? It's like, crazy town is how it sounds. Basically, we'll see what comes of it. I will be looking for information. And of course, the Biological Weapons Treaty, the ban on biological weapons, was written, of course, by Francis Boyle, who now passed away 2 weeks before he was meant to go and testify in Europe against Bill Gates. Okay, the incredible scholar and person who escaped the Kissinger-style super elite Harvard grooming program that he was in. He left so that he could work for the people, and he wrote the treaty against biological weapons, the international treaty. And so, okay, now he basically said that that the UN is, creating problems rather than solving them, talking about the assault on Western countries by running the migration invasion operations. And he talked specifically about $372 million they've been able to track out of the UN that was used to fund only 624,000, supposedly, migrants' trips into the USA. Okay. awful lot of money, that, because it's all going, of course, to the NGOs, to highest at all. And he said that what the UN did in creating this migration invasion against Europe and the USA is unacceptable, that people from across the world, from undeveloped and diverse cultures that have no social contract with Western civilization, cannot be allowed to trample the borders of Western countries. And he talked about how the crime in across Europe in all of their prisons, and he always talks about this, they let the criminals go. They specifically brought the criminals to the US and to Europe. And he says that that what's going on here in Europe is that at least 50% of their prison population are all these migrants, a lot of it for violent crime. And that, the raping and killing their way across Europe. And he talked about something like 54% in Greece of their prison population is migrant criminals, and 53% in Austria. He talked about 72% in Switzerland. In Switzerland, it was like, if you don't have a Swiss, ancestry, you could never, ever get any kind of citizenship in Switzerland. This whole new thing of let's destroy Switzerland is an interesting little endgame here, but we'll get back to that. A lot going on in Switzerland right now, actually, with their massive censorship, massive attack on free speech, huge lockdown going on in speech in Switzerland. And so bringing that out, and let's make no mistake, this is, a Muslim crime mostly, or sub-Saharan Africans, and etc. And so what we have is Trump then going into the UK, talking about the destruction of the UK, how it's a completely different place. It's not the same at all. He said that now they want Sharia law, that Sadiq Khan is an awful, terrible mayor destroying London. And he said Sharia law cannot happen in these Western countries. That is not something you can take from your Muslim country and bring it to the West. I mean, these are amazing things that he's saying in front of the UN, okay? Huge, huge. And then he goes into the climate. And he talks about, he basically says it's a giant long con of the UN, meaning the globalist elites, to trick the Western world into giving up 37%, basically their massive infrastructure of fossil fuel energy, all their factories, their entire economies destroyed. And he talked about, basically how this is a huge con and a grift and completely fake. He called out Barack Obama. He talked about the carbon footprint. He said, "Oh, look, Europe has brought its carbon footprint down by 35%. Incredible, in these 10 years, while it's destroyed its economy and completely gone bankrupt, like Germany." And he said, but at the same time, the carbon footprint in the world has risen by 52% because of China and India and Southeast Asia and all of the massive pollution that's going on in these unregulated countries with their protected status. It's all meant to destroy the West. I'm telling you everything you know, but to have a president of the United States get up and tell the UN this all to their faces, with all of them sitting in the audience, all their ambassadors and beyond, plus the leaders sitting out there listening to him, just call them out straight up. Very, very exciting. He congratulated Germany for reversing course, going back to some fossil fuels, etc. But Germany is still bankrupt. And they're all just cheering on for war, trying to push that there's going to be now, the draft, that they're going to have compulsory military service. Well, literally, people are like, "What? What are you talking? We have the best socialist states in the world. We're not going to the military. You crazy?" And they, the AfD in Germany, now you have the populists on the left siding with AfD, like they're joining a huge coalition to go against the globalist, tyrannical government, communist, fascist government. And so it's very interesting to see it's happening, right? It's happening in UK, it's happening here, and the rising up is happening in Spain. There's so much going on. Italy. And so basically, Trump calls out the climate agenda and he says, if you don't get away from the green scam, your countries will fall. If you don't stop this little suicidal march, he says, if you don't end unchecked migration, your country will fall. You're destroying your heritage. And this is the double-headed assault of the destruction of the economy through the fake green scam and the destruction of the country through the Muslimification, through the migration invasion. So very, very powerful, very amazing. And, you know, your countries are going to hell, right? He calls out Maduro during the speech. Basically, he says we're going to continue to destroy any ships that are transporting drugs to the United States. And it was kind of just an epic, you know, relaunch of the West, a pro-human future that he was putting out to everybody. And the people of the world, I'm sure, are just thrilled and overjoyed about this speech today, because it was just, like he always says, common sense, talking about the people are what matter, what supports an economy that helps their lives matters, and borders to preserve your own culture and heritage matter, and you're on a suicidal mission, what very much looks like a planned destruction. And then he did an allusion here to Lula. He had met Lula in the lobby on his way in to do his speech, and he spoke kindly of Lula. I liked him. I only do business with people I like. Basically buttering up Lula. We know that the Trump administration is going after even extending their sanctions and attack on the whole judiciary system of Brazil over Bolsonaro getting this 27-year prison sentence where he's very likely to be murdered in prison. And that Trump is, you know, calling out Brazil, saying, you can't make it out without America, you know, it won't happen. And, but, you know, buttering up Lula, the real criminal and the election stealer. And so we'll see what comes out of that meeting. But then he basically comes out and defends Christianity, and he says Christianity is the most persecuted religion on earth. That's huge. He doesn't then say, and also the Jews. He doesn't say, and also anybody. He says Christianity is the most persecuted religion on earth. Very exciting. And he says you have the righteous task of protecting the nations your ancestors built. He says we can all be proud. We all are coming from our ancestors who built these cultures and heritages, and it is our responsibility to preserve and protect them. Very, very incredible speech. Very, very heartfelt. And even though he wasn't overtly high energy, he did get so at different times during it. He was very clear, and he did his, you know, total Trump things of just, you know, you should listen to me. I'm very smart about these things. I'm always right. You know, just listen. and, you know, it was great, actually. And so it was very much a unity speech, okay, to humanity of the 193 countries in the United Nations. Basically, that for mutual prosperity, he came out and very much said, we need nation states with, you know, clear borders that are protected, to have prosperity and also have national pride in your heritage and your culture, and that every country should have it, that their traditions must be protected to save the West, and also the protection of Christians globally. So very, very exciting, very amazing. And then he went on to talk about the child trafficking. He put out the number 300,000, but we know it's closer to 500,000 children. I'm sure it's actually much larger that were trafficked. He blamed the UN for the child trafficking, with the migration invasion, with the money, with all of the NGOs. He blamed the UN for the trafficking and the disappearance of the children, called out what had happened to them, the rapes, murders, and he explicitly said that they're being sold. The children are being sold. Can you imagine? That's what the UN is responsible for. So very, very, quite amazing, and I think it's well worth listening to. If you haven't, I will link it below. But a profound and incredible day here as we're looking at this world stage of everything going on. And I'm going to wind this video up with a couple things. I think I'm going to mention real quick that we have, I think this kind of came out of the Google antitrust, you know, Gail Slater, you know, she wanted to do a lot more to break them up. I think there was a lot of politics going on, but we do have Google coming out that the people that were you know, that were banned from YouTube, the channels, that if you were banned specifically for all the COVID stuff, for speaking the truth about the biowarfare, that you can get your channel back. Interesting. So we'll see if You Are Free TV gets the channel back. I know it's banned for multiple things, but we will see what goes on there. But very interesting that they're going that route. And it gets into, you know, we have this whole Alex Jones thing going on where he's been meeting with Ed Martin. He's been going to DC to talk about him being kind of the #1 sort of test case target for the mass attack in censorship and takedown and $1 billion, never heard of before, uh, payment and trying to steal everything. And they're coming out with, he was talking about something called US Code 208, 18 US Code 208, and basically acts affecting a personal financial interest, acts affecting a personal financial interest, and this connected to the conspiracy against rights and all of this that they're going through with the weaponization of government task force under Ed Martin, to basically identify what's gone down with the mass lawfare, with the huge, you know, like Weiss and others, all these huge law firms that normally get money from our government. Okay, huge government contracts that Trump went after hard in the spring. And they are uncovering huge amounts of operations here to go after these law firms, et cetera, the NGOs involved, the funding, all of it, of course, you know, one way or another, reaching back to the Soros Foundation. And so it's very interesting to see. We'll see what goes on there, and how this could affect all of us that were censored and had our, you know, financial interests interfered with by these NGOs, government interests, okay, and the censorship tyranny. So very interesting there. And we do have, what's her name, the new Halligan, right? The Halligan, she was the top White House aide who Trump nominated yesterday to put in Virginia as the interim U.S. attorney in Virginia, and she'll be overseeing the Letitia Games mortgage fraud case. And so she's now sworn in there. So that is fantastic. And I think I'll end on this, which has to do with Charlie Kirk. And, you know, Candace Owens has been putting up a lot of stuff, but I wanted to cover this about a witness that she has that it looks like she's protecting his identity here, but it's confirmed by over 3,000 people who heard this, what was the police scanner confirmation, the police scanner that was still live at that time, that they then went dark and private. But that the person who this person saw immediately after the shot fired was a person in tactical gear with a face mask on, and that to this person they looked like a foreigner and a trained assassin. They said that they moved and acted as if this was a military operation, and that this person ran to the FBI after they were arresting that George Zinn character, obviously inserted as a diversion, dropped his pants and everything. That's even so creepy and weird. Uh, but basically, and that all happened within 1 minute and 8 seconds, okay, after the shot of George Zinn entering the field of mayhem, right where the SUVs were. But this situation of this person, and this also being the description of the person on the police scanner, was that he also said that there's no way it was a Mauser gun. that what he saw what he would think would be a Horady VMAX lightweight rifle shooting totally different bullets, and that and yeah, so I think that's important to keep putting out this information on Kirk, and on this channel I probably won't. Well, I will if it becomes like a thing that I want to just dig in as things go on. But the narrative stinks, and we're sick of being lied to, and it's so awful when it's the deep state for so long, okay? But when it becomes part of our administration that we support, that we are being lied to, um, to control the situation. Okay, we want, as we the people, to control our own situation, and we want the truth. And so that's why I'm putting that out there. That the truth is the only thing that matters. You know, that without truth, you can't have true freedom, because in all of the lies, I mean, you can have freedom within God. In God, we are free, absolutely. But the manipulation of the truth, even in the supposed, you know, big picture, the plan, all of it, to manipulate it for this end goal of winning and freedom, it hasn't worked in the hundreds of years of subterfuge and machinations, right? The Machiavellian way, the secret society way, all of it. That putting the truth out and letting us get on with it, get on with the real deal, with the reality, is, I believe, in my heart, what I wish. And so I'm just putting that out there. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight. I hope that you found something helpful and informative in this video, and this just kind of cheering leading of Trump's speech at the UN today. Thank God for his safety and Melania's safety, and we continue to pray for that hugely, massively, because I absolutely do pray for Trump in all of his efforts every day that he gets up, from the autism announcements yesterday to today at the UN and all of the meetings there, the never-ending tasks and just the stamina of this man at 79 years old. So prayers ongoing there. And so I will leave that there. I'll remind everybody, with my great sponsor on a separate level, there is a fundraiser ending up this week to do with these Evo caps that I have, that have recently expired, that doing a fundraiser for the channel with, and this week will probably wrap it up, of basically, if you donate $50 plus $10 for shipping, you can get a bottle of these recently expired Evo caps that, you know, have an 8 to 10 year shelf life, are incredibly powerful and amazing. And for people who can't afford the brand new, just just bottled variety, it's a great way to try it and get the benefits, or to purchase them for your friends and family, for them to try it, etc. And basically to donate to support the channel. And it outlines below if you want to buy more, the costs, etc. You can check out in the description below, and also just to support them as my sponsor in your purchases, c60evo.com/YAFTV, code YAFTV for 10% off in your regular purchases in support of the channel. And the fundraiser is a totally separate thing. It all happens through the description below. Oh, and I wanted to remember to mention to Diane, we need your address, your mailing address, Diane. I've been trying to reach you, and I can't do anything without that mailing address. So just saying that here at the end. So thanks so much for watching. Prayer wave ongoing. Prayers so paramount as we regather ourselves and continue on taking action with our full armor of God, and being warriors for the Prince of Peace. So you are free. I will see you tomorrow. And yeah, that's it. You are free.